Welcome. So here we are. We've covered the case for trust, the overview of the eight pillars, and now we're going to do a deep dive into seeing how the compassion pillar impacts trust. Compassion affects trust because people put faith in those who care beyond themselves. If our employers, colleagues, friends, families, if they don't experience compassion from us, our trustworthiness as a whole is negatively affected. Now, I would say also, if they do experience compassion, it builds the trust. So I know I've already told the story about being a rookie on the fire department, but I'm going to tell another one. In my town, we had this crazy hill. And at the top of the hill, there was a big sign which said trucks over a certain tonnage are excluded. It's illegal to go down this hill. But trucks used to break that rule all the time. Now, on this particular day, a full dump truck ignored the sign. And sure enough, on its way down that steep hill, its brakes gave out. And it came careening down the side of this hill, and as it hit the T intersection of the X, skidded to the side, slammed into a telephone pole, which had snapped like a twig, bounced off, and pancaked a sports car with two people in it. Now, of course, as a fire department, we get called out because we have to help get these people out so we can get them to the hospital and hopefully save their lives. As a rookie, I was there putting out all the equipment because I wasn't qualified to touch anything yet. And I watched as my fellow firefighters were, using the jaws of life and the cutters and whatever else to try and get these people out. But what caught my attention even more was a police officer, a patrolman, had gotten out of his squad car and then laid out across the trunk of this flattened car, which was covered in twisted steel and broken glass, and reached his arm through this tiny hole of the windshield, which had been flattened out, and grabbed the hand of the woman in the passenger seat. And while all the rest of this chaos is going around and the fire department is cutting them out and the ambulances are coming up and getting ready, this police officer just held onto this woman's hand. And he talked her through this whole thing. I'm right here, ma'am. We've got you. The fire department almost has you out. We're taking care of your husband. We're right here. We're going to get you help. And as this poor woman who's going through shock and panic is going through one of the most horrific ordeals of her life, he was there showing her compassion and was not leaving her side. Now, this is particularly important because the time that this happened was when all the news was about defunding the police. When across the country, we were getting all these newsreels about police brutality and other issues, which were putting the police in a bad light. But you better believe that watching this patrolman working with that woman in that car, it built my trust that at least my local police department was there for us. And my trust for them went through the roof. So we're going to have a quick discussion here. I want you to think about an exceptional person who you've partnered with at work and ask yourself, what made that person stand out to you? We'll take a few minutes and we'll have that discussion. Now, the Trust Outlook research found that the number one reason that people leave an organization is not feeling appreciated. So one way to increase that compassion is to show genuine appreciation for people and their work. Now, I'll give you another quick story. One of the other things that I did in my previous life was I was a submarine officer. I was one of multiple junior officers on board the submarine. And while I was there, we were at an all-time low. We had failed a couple of inspections. That the ship was old, there were problems left and right, and we were working crazy hours, 36-hour shifts, 120-degree engine rooms with no air conditioning going on, just hit after hit after half, getting ready for these inspections and get the ship ready to go back to sea again. And I remember one of my other junior officers coming up to me, good friend of mine, and he said, what bothers me isn't the hours, it isn't the working conditions, isn't all the rest of this. He says, but you realize that no one ever said, good job. No one's ever acknowledged the amount of work that we're putting in on a day-to-day basis. And of the 13 junior officers who I served with over my stint on board the USS Los Angeles, only one continued on in the Navy. Every other one got out. Something to think about, Navy. So we're going to take a look at a quick video now, and we're going to take a further look at why compassion is a pillar of trust. Maya Angelou said that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. So before clicking onto this next slide, I want to take a look at 4 ways that we can build compassion in the workplace. And that the Trust Edge Leadership Institute calls them the laws of compassion. Okay, so here are the laws. These are the ways that we can build compassion on a daily basis. So it's listen, appreciate, wake up and be present, and serve selflessly. Now, remember, using the laws builds compassion, which increases trust because people put faith in those who are genuinely care and have intent beyond themselves. Now, under appreciate from the laws of compassion, David shares a method for showing appreciation in a way that actually affects culture change, which is huge for corporations and organizations. It's called the SPA method. Okay, so we've talked about the SPA message being specific, personal, and authentic. So we're going to do a quick exercise right now. Grab a blank piece of paper. And what I want you to do is write a thank you note to a colleague who has done something that you appreciate. Make sure that we're being specific, personal, and authentic. Can give everybody 2 minutes, right quickly. Now, under the W of the laws of compassion, we have wake up and be present. Now, to help us be present, we can minimize distractions. So when I worked at my corporate job, one of the people that I worked for was a woman named Jean. And Jean, to this day, is one of the best people who I ever worked for. And I remember the first meeting that I had with her. I went into her office and she said, "Hold on 1 second, please." And she took her cell phone, she put it on mute, dropped it in her purse, and then shoved the purse under her desk. And then she reached forward and she clicked the off button on her computer monitor. She said, "I'm sorry, I can't multitask. I can only concentrate on one thing at a time, and I don't like being distracted." This blew my mind. In a world where everybody was asking for 2 or 3 monitors and had these smartphones so that they could constantly be interacting with the world around them and never be out of the loop, Jean was stopping and clearing all those distractions out of the way. And I realized in that moment that every time I would have a conversation with Jean, I knew that I had her full attention. You better believe that made a massive impact on me. And as I've moved forward in trying to be a leader with other people, if I'm going to have a sit down conversation with somebody, I turn off the cell phone. May even go so far as to remove my smartwatch so it's not buzzing, all because Jean showed me how to be present. Okay, so we're going to take a couple seconds here. And what I want you to do is speed round. I want you to make a list in the next 40 seconds, or what are some of the things that distract you during a workday? Go ahead. I'm going to give you 40 seconds. All right, you've all had your 40 seconds. So now I'm going to ask you to start calling them on out. All right, let me know what are the things that distract you. Bring them on out. Okay, so here's some of the things that were called out from us. Right, the daily distractions that we've all said: the emails, the gossip, the unnecessary meetings, all this other stuff. So all these came up in our discussion, and most of us experience multiple of these every single day. But we can only control what we do, and not normally what others do. So on your worksheet or somewhere in the margins, write down a couple of ways that you can help yourself to minimize these distractions. Go ahead. I'm going to give you 30 seconds. Now, what we want to be careful about here is minimizing distractions, but not at the expense of trust and relationships. So how can you and I focus on people and priorities amid common distractions? All right, so go ahead. Let's get some ideas. Throw them on out there. Okay, so I'd like to do a little bit of a recap here. We've talked about compassion, and I think in the past we would always think about compassion as showing empathy to somebody when they're having trouble, but we realize now that it's more than that. It's about being genuine, right? It's being there for them. All right, it's acknowledging what they're going through. All right, so let's start off with what does this now mean to us as a group, or perhaps us as a company? All right, now next thing I want to talk about is what does this mean to you? Think about how maybe you in your life can be showing this to other people, or how other people showing this to you, or a lack of showing it to you, may have impacted you. All right, and finally, what are you going to do about this by your next session? Okay. Now, here's what I want you to do. I want you to get in a group. It can be two. A group can be two or three or whatever it is. But I want you to be very specific now. I want you to think about how you are going to change something that you're doing or implement something we've talked about in the next 24 hours. I want you to be very specific, and I want you to share it amongst each other. All right. And guys, we're going to hold each other accountable. If you don't think they're being specific enough, or you don't think it's quite where we need to go, ask them, what is it about this that's going to work? Or say, can you be more specific? Let's really hold each other accountable and see where we can go with this. Okay, now that we've done this, I want to take a slight twist on this. Take a look around the room and find somebody who you know you're going to interact with in the next 24 to 48 hours. And I want you once again to share what it is that your group helped you determine you can work on. You are going to tell them this thing that you're going to do, and they're going to help you be accountable. And they're going to ask you about this in the next day or two. All right. So remember, people put faith in those who care beyond themselves. Keep that in mind, and I look forward to joining you for our next pillar.